This is VOA News. I'm Joe Ramsey. Fears the Israel-Hamas war could mushroom into a wider Middle East conflict rose on Sunday, with Washington warning of a significant risk to U.S. interest in the region as ally Israel pounded Gaza and clashes on its border with Lebanon intensified. Gaza's health ministry said 266 Palestinians, including 117 children, had been killed by Israeli airstrikes in the past 24 hours in the enclave, to which Israel laid quote-unquote total siege after a deadly mass infiltration into Israel by Hamas gunmen on October 7th. Hundreds of Gazans waited for hours on Sunday to buy bread as aid slowly trickled in across the Rafah border on the Egyptian side, as a second convoy of around 19 aid trucks was allowed to enter, according to Egyptian security and humanitarian sources. Reuters correspondent Fiona Jones reports.
The first humanitarian aid convoy allowed into Gaza since war erupted arrived on Saturday. It was after days of torturous negotiations. The UN said the 20-truck convoy brought life-saving medical supplies and some food. However, the UN said the amount of aid that had entered so far was just 4% of the daily average prior to this siege, and was a fraction of what was needed, with food, water, medicines and fuel stocks running out. UN officials say at least 100 trucks a day would be required in Gaza to cover urgent needs.
Reuters correspondent Fiona Jones. About 20,000 people packed into London's Trafalgar Square on Sunday to demand the release of more than 200 hostages taken by Hamas during their October 7th incursion from Gaza into Israel, where more than 1,300 Israelis were killed. This is VOA News. The U.S. State Department said on Sunday U.S. citizens should not travel to Iraq after recent attacks on American troops and personnel in the region. The advisory followed the ordered departure of eligible family members and non-emergency U.S. government personnel from U.S. Embassy Baghdad and U.S. Consulate General Erbil, quote, due to increased security threats against U.S. personnel and interests, the State Department said in a statement. Police in the U.S. city of Detroit and the state of Michigan are confirming the violent killing of a Jewish leader in their community. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
Many questions remain, but a Detroit police corporal says the body of 40-year-old Samantha Wall was found stabbed outside her home. He says Wall, who is the president of the Isaac Agri Downtown Synagogue, suffered multiple stab wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. Tributes are coming in for Wall, who had also served as an aide to Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin and a campaign staffer for Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. Nessel tweeted that she was shocked, saddened, and horrified, calling Wall as kind a person as she's ever known. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Pakistan's three-time former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif returned to the country Saturday after living in self-imposed exile for 4 years in Britain. Analysts say Sharif's return will help restart politics in Pakistan, which had been stifled for months, but regaining political space lost to the powerful military will remain difficult. VOA's Pakistan bureau chief Sarah Zaman reports from Sharif's political stronghold, Lahore.
A sea of party flags, fireworks in the sky, and banners promising he will fix it all again. A rousing welcome for Pakistan's three-time deposed former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who returned Saturday after 4 years of self-imposed exile. Sharif left the country in 2018 for medical treatment while serving a prison sentence for corruption. As weeks of absence turned into years, he was declared a fugitive. His return is widely seen as the result of a deal with the country's powerful military, ahead of elections expected early next year. Sarah Zaman, VOA News, Lahore, Pakistan.
Ukraine's positions around the frontline city of Avdiivka in the eastern Donetsk region are protected, President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his evening address Sunday. The city has been the center of intense fighting in recent weeks as each side struggles to advance along the front lines. Ukraine's general staff said on Friday Russia had stepped up its military assault on Avdiivka in an ongoing bid to encircle it and capture it. Find more on our website, voanews.com. I'm Joe Ramsey. This is VOA News. I'm Joe Ramsey. The International Committee of the Red Cross says Hamas militants have released 2 hostages it had been holding captive in the Gaza Strip. It was the second time the group has freed hostages seized in its bloody October 7th cross-border incursion into Israel. A U.S. official said Monday Washington has advised Israel to delay a possible ground invasion to allow more time to try to secure the release of more hostages. Israel pounded hundreds of targets in Gaza from the air on Monday, while its soldiers also fought Hamas militants during raids into the besieged Palestinian enclave. Deaths in Gaza are soaring and civilians are trapped in harrowing conditions. Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder has more.
Spokesperson for the Israeli military, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said tanks and infantry went in overnight and killed, quote, squads of terrorists. The soldiers also tried to gather information on the 222 hostages being held by the Islamist Hamas, he said. In the Sheikh Radwan area of Gaza City, families were forced to flee an Israeli strike. Hundreds were killed by such attacks in the past 24 hours, mostly in the south of the narrow, densely populated strip, Gaza's health ministry said, bringing Palestinian deaths in the 2 weeks of Israeli strikes to more than 5,000.
Reuters correspondent Lucy Fielder. A spokesman for the UN Secretary General told reporters at a media briefing at UN headquarters in New York City 20 trucks carrying humanitarian aid crossed into Gaza from Egypt on Monday.
Aid deliveries entering Gaza have not included fuel. The UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, tells us that they will exhaust their fuel reserves within the coming days.
This is VOA News. The U.S. Defense Department is rushing military advisors and more defenses to the Middle East as Israel's ground assault in Gaza looms. AP Washington correspondent Sagar Magani reports.
National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says the U.S. is trying to prevent the Israel-Hamas fight from becoming a wider war and looking to protect U.S. troops who have come under repeated attacks, which Iran is likely endorsing.
And in some cases, actively facilitating these attacks and spurring on others.
The Pentagon has sent missile defense systems and 2 carrier strike groups to the region. One U.S. official says the Biden administration has also advised Israel to consider delaying the Gaza assault to give more time for securing the release of Hamas hostages. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Russian forces on Monday pressed their attacks on 2 frontline areas of eastern Ukraine, seeking to sever the sole supply route into the devastated city of Avdiivka and advance on the key town of Kupiansk farther north. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said its troops had repelled about 10 Russian attacks on Avdiivka. The head of Avdiivka's military administration said there were round-the-clock strikes on its town center and the sole road used to bring in supplies. An off-duty airplane pilot is being charged with dozens of counts of attempted murder after he allegedly tried to shut down the engines during a Horizon Air flight out of the western U.S. state of Washington Sunday. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
We've got the guy that tried to shut the engines down out of the cockpit.
Authorities in Oregon, where the man was arrested after the Horizon Air regional jet made an emergency landing, say that 44-year-old Joseph Emerson, an off-duty pilot for the airline, had been allowed to sit in a cockpit jump seat for the flight to San Francisco. The plane's 2 pilots radioed to air traffic controllers, as heard on live ATC.net.
We want law enforcement as soon as we get on the ground.
County Sheriff's Office says Emerson's being held on 83 counts of attempted murder and reckless endangerment. I'm Jackie Quinn.
At least 17 people were killed and scores injured on Monday after 2 trains collided in eastern Bangladesh, police said. A passenger train crashed into a freight train about 80 kilometers north of the capital, Dhaka. The superintendent of Dhaka Railway Police said the death toll could climb as rescue operations were ongoing, adding the freight train smashed into the passenger train from behind, crumpling 2 coaches. Find more on our website, voanews.com. I'm Joe Ramsey.